Today I'm going to go over my history in cold approach slash day game, taking you from the start, going from when I completely failed for several years to ever actually approach any girl, and then the mad 6 months or so where I finally managed to get approaching and have really crazy early success. So, when I first found out about kind of the idea of game and approaching women, this was from my flatmate. So basically, he had a copy of The Game by Neil Strauss, a very famous book, and he was trying to convince everyone to read it and do these like PUA style pickup routines with him, which we were all going to just do like when we went out normally. So at the time, I was very sexually inexperienced. I was a virgin, although I didn't tell anyone, obviously, and I didn't like let them know. They kind of knew. It was well known in the house that I was abysmal with women, but there wasn't really like, any like I didn't tell them explicitly. And this was also like kind of like a bit of fun. Like we were going to a lot of parties and a lot of clubs, and he thought we could like try and like chat up girls the normal way. So there wasn't anything about like day game, daytime approaching, anything like that. It was at university, so this was even before like Tinder and the normalization of online dating had really come in. Like Tinder had only really been a thing in everyone's minds for like 2 years at that point. So we were mostly like all the guys I knew, they either had girlfriends or they got laid in clubs when the uni nights were on. So yeah, there was no like third way. It was all social circle or nightclubs, and there was no other way. So yeah, I never really used any of it, never at all. And then after like a while, I did get very obsessed with like the literature, like the idea of the PUA stuff and all that. So I was looking online, and eventually I found Good Looking Loser. I've forgotten how, but his whole shtick was basically that none of the pickup stuff is real. Like none of the PUA stuff is, none of it's valid. It's all about how you look and whether you have the balls to actually talk to women, which I still to this day agree with. And that's what I would tell anyone who's asking me like how to get girls. You just have to have the balls to talk to them, and you have to look good enough to not get rejected. That is it. So I obviously found out about his AA program, which seemed like the silver bullet. Like it seemed like that was going to be the key to finally being able to tell girls that I liked them. I should point out at this time, my problem wasn't necessarily like telling girls I liked them. My problem was being like mature enough to like get with a girl in general. Like I had opportunities and fucked everything up basically, purely like self-sabotage. I was too inexperienced. I didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't until like a year after university when I was like 22 where I really had like it in me to like actually progress things with a girl. So I wasn't ready. Like I don't know. I was like trying to jump into a Formula One car when I haven't passed my license. It was silly. But I did start the AA program, which you can still go find on Good Looking Losers site, where it's basically a program that gets you to talk to girls, and you start off by asking them for the time, and you ask them for directions, and it kind of ramps up until you're doing stupid shit like singing the alphabet to girls and or like high-fiving them, like double high fives. It's very silly, but the whole idea is like you get social freedom because you end up like after a while exposing yourself to more and more social fear and then just overcoming it. So it works. I know a lot of guys who've gone through it to the end and it really worked for them. I bailed at the alphabet. I bailed at like week 3 and just couldn't get any further. I ended up leaving uni. I went to get a job. I ended up getting a long distance girlfriend. That ended. I managed to boot up Tinder and have a small amount of success and find a girl off there. That ended. And then eventually I found a long-term girlfriend in my friend group, and we were together for like a whole year. Then I went traveling. So after I broke up with her, I was traveling, and when it's basically just like you go out at night with girls in your hostels and you meet girls and you go back together, or you meet girls in just basically meeting girls in bars essentially, but like very organic. So it wasn't a case of like approaching. And then my travels ended up with me in Australia. And this is where like I actually came back to the idea of, oh yeah, there was that site where they taught people how to approach like girls you don't know. And like the driving principle behind all of this is like the whole reason pickup is so attractive to guys is that they have these moments where they see hot girls or girls they're attracted to, or even in their social groups, they've got these girls that they've always wanted to tell, like, this is how I feel about you. And they've never had the balls to overcome the fear to ever tell random girls or girls they know. They have approach anxiety. That's what it is. And this is like one of the biggest things about pickup is it tells you you can get over this and you can go and potentially get any girl you want because you have no fear. And that's the whole selling point of like beating this approach anxiety. So when I was in Australia, I was very like, again, quite starved for ways to get girls. Like the only way I could get girls where I was like hostels and going out with the hostel girls. And that happened, that did get me like lucky a few times. I got fairly lucky, but like everyone does. It's like one of those things where it's really easy because you're like living with the girls that you like interact with. Eventually, like I just got really like sick of how it wasn't consistent enough for me, and I didn't feel like I had really had a chance with any of the like girls I really liked. So I got really frustrated with my situation. I had a really bad relationship issue with a girl who I'm not going to talk about too much on this channel. And basically after that, I saw that Andy, Courier and the Loser, was offering coaching via the GLL forum, and I was just like, fuck it, I'm going to go and see him, and maybe I'll consider doing some approaches if he wants to like teach me. And we basically went down and sat and like fixed my life. But at the end of it, like after we'd written out like a plan for what I was going to do, because he offers like coaching about life in general, at the end of it, he was like, do you want to approach some girls? And I was shitting myself, but I was like, fine, you can try and get me to approach. So we walked around this mall, and like he showed me like 3 or 4 times, like it doesn't matter, you just go up to these girls and be like, hey, you're cute, I'm Andy, are you single? And that's all you do. And if they say no, you piss off. If they say yeah, you have a conversation and try and get their number. And that is it. And that's how polite and straightforward you should be. And that is the best way to do it. And eventually he managed to get me to do one. And then he got me to do a second one as well about 20 minutes later. And they were both really quick blow-offs, like, sorry, no, I'm not single. Or they just walked away. And that was all it was. It was very like low stress, no big deal. It was crazy how like it wasn't a big deal. That was like the biggest realization. So then I had to go off on my own because obviously he wasn't going to stick around with me for the next few days. And he gave me this challenge of doing one approach every single day. So I would leave my hostel while I was staying in Melbourne temporarily, and I would try and find a girl to be able to approach on every single day, at least one girl. And that was like my mission. And so the first day after I'd done 2 with Andy, and then the first day after I had to do 1 on my own. So the first one I ever did on my own, I walked down this, it's like this bridge in the malls that connected 2 of the malls, and there was loads of cafes. And this girl was sat on like a lounge chair, having like a cup of coffee. And I went past her at first, and I was like, oh, she's really cute. So I like doubled back around and walked up to her and was like absolutely shaking, so nervous. And I was like, hi, I think you're cute. Are you single? And her response was, what do you think? And she looked at me like, and then she said, do you want to sit down? I was like, holy shit, this is going well. So we had a little conversation. She was on break from her work and she was just getting a coffee, and she gave me her number. And I was like, this is my 3rd ever approach. And I got a number. I was like, that's crazy. So I like messaged Andy, like, what do I do? And he's like, oh, just text her and try and meet up with her for a date like 2 days later. And we went on this date, and she wanted to come on a 2nd date. And then she wanted to come on a 3rd date. And then on the 3rd date, we ended up back at my hostel together. And that was my 3rd ever approach. And oh yeah, I got a private room as well. That was like just like a bit of a gamble, but I ended up getting a private room back at my hostel. And that was absolutely crazy. 3rd ever approach. But that is not the end of the craziness, because like the day before I went on the final 3rd date with her, I had got up to like 7 approaches. And the 7th approach is also like super receptive and like gives me her number as well. And I'm messaging Andy being like, yo, I think I've got this other girl, like I've just slept with the 3rd girl I ever approached, but I think I've got another girl as well on my 7th. And Andy was like losing his mind. He was like, it's not meant to go this well. Like, what the hell are you doing? So again, like 3 dates for this 7th girl. And 3 dates was all it needed. And she ended up back at the hostel again. And I got the private room for a 2nd time, the same one. Like, this is crazy. This is my first ever 2 weeks of cold approach. And 3rd and 7th girl I ever approached. And from there, like I had momentum. I was finding it easier to approach every single day. I didn't get too many more numbers and too many successes in the early run. Eventually I kind of fell off doing it once a day as well, a little bit. It was getting like harder and harder for me to like, while I was doing other things like working. But I think the reason I'm doing this video and like giving this experience is that I want to get back into it. And I'm doing this video so that I have somewhere on record, like with the story. So that was my first 2 weeks of cold approaching after 5 years of not being able to do it from the first time I learned about it. All I needed to do was flick the trigger and actually start doing the approaches and I would have success. And I felt like I kicked myself for the years that I just didn't find the balls to do it. All right, guys, that's all there is to this story. Peace out, and I'll speak to you guys next time.